Setbacks are temporary, but comebacks, they are legendary. Welcome back to the PSI Effect, where we pause, shift, and ignite purpose that speaks louder than your past. This is Neug, and together with Franky, we're your hosts in this space, and your comeback starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PSI Effect podcast. We're so glad that you're here. I am here with Franky. It's always a pleasure to be in this space with him and to bring something interesting to you. And, today we have an interesting conversation that I think that you will enjoy. And I'm excited to bring it to you. And I think Franky is as well. So we're going to be talking today about your doom scroll. And I know we have mentioned this in previous episodes, but I'm going to dig into it a little bit here. But before we do want to make sure that we thank our seasoned listeners and welcome our newbies into this space. And we really appreciate you being here. We ask that you do all the things that the social spaces allow you to do, and like and follow and subscribe so that we can reach other folks and bring them into the space. So really appreciate that. And before we jump in, as always, we get a good word from our good friend Franky. So Franky, tell us what is happening on this warm and humid day.
Sweat. That's what's happening. Sweat. There's a lot of heat and humidity, and that I'm not a small person, so that equals sweat. But I'm glad because I get to be in this space, regardless of the heat and humidity outside. I actually was out in the heat and humidity earlier today. My youngest son wanted to go fishing. So we went out, got up early this morning, got out, got all our gear, and went out to Jordan Lake to do some fishing from the pier and from the shore. And we were out there for maybe about 3.5 hours. So it was a good stint. And I always like fishing, especially with my youngest, because nothing will teach you patience like fishing can. Being out there where we've walked far away from the car, walking along the shore to find the perfect spot. And then you just got to cast that line out there and wait and be attentive and things like that. It's definitely not one of those things. You used that term microwave culture a few episodes ago. You definitely have to be very intentional about your patience. And one of the things that's always, I won't say amusing, but always interesting to watch with my youngest son in particular is that when his patience starts to run low, it's very visible. So having to deal with those emotions, because when you get frustrated, it's easy to lash out with anger first and get frustrated and be mad about something. And that's just compounding things, especially when you're trying to fish. Fishing's supposed to be relaxing, enjoying nature, all those things. But we still had a good time. We didn't catch anything worth bringing home. Had a big old catfish that I got right to the edge of the pier. And as soon as I was lifting it out of the water, the line snapped. But, it just lets me tell a really good story about how big it looked like it was before I got it out of the water.
Well, sorry that you lost dinner there, but I'm sure you guys will have other opportunities to go out there and try it again. You talked about patience, and that's kind of a mini segue into what we're talking about. We're talking about doom scrolling, which is going to lead us into some other conversations, about anxiety and such. And so, we're talking about today, disconnecting from the doom scrolling, or disconnecting from the outrage machine, which can be, I should say, the social spaces. And so, one of the things that came to mind was we're always asking the audience to follow us and like us and subscribe so that the algorithm is nice to us and that it finds, other folks who are looking to join a space like this. And,
Right.
Got to thinking about that and how some of the platforms out there, or not the platforms, but some of the social spaces out there are not necessarily or may not necessarily be your favored spaces for positivity and growth and all of that. And so, just wanted to start off today to say that, and to say that, we genuinely mean something good in your life when we ask you to follow us and to like and subscribe, because we are trying to bring positivity. We are trying to bring good tips and ideas on how you can come back from a setback and reach your comeback. And so that's what this space is all about. And so, we know that the algorithms are designed to, get people to act in a certain way. And so we want to make sure that we are conscious of your decision to be here with us. And, we appreciate you being here with us in a positive space, or what we're really working to make sure is a positive space for your positive benefit. So, um, you know, uh, I just wanted to, put that out there before we get started. Frankie, anything you might want to add to that?
Well, I mean, just talking about the algorithm. Whenever we say the algorithm, that makes me think about we have some sort of maleficent digital overlords that are trying to curate our experience. And quite honestly, that's not that far from the truth. We talk about the algorithm like we're stuck in the matrix. And if we're not careful, we can be where this algorithm, I mean, it's amazing to me, all the different information that our social media platforms capture about how we use those platforms, and then uses that information to determine what the algorithm kind of feeds us. And if we're not careful, that can spiral out of control. We talked about, spiraling to rock bottom and things like that. But I think you're spot on. We want our listeners to be very intentional about the input that they select to try to build that comeback.
Yeah, and the algorithms, I know they do a lot. And from some things that I've read, some studies that have been done, we know that the algorithms in some instances are really geared to have people act and react in a certain way to the content that's presented to them on social media. And so, we just want to drive the point home that, social media is not necessarily a bad thing. Where it can be very impactful is in your decision of what you actually consume, and how you utilize what you have received through that consumption.
So, you know, you said deciding what we consume. Sometimes it feels, I know I've fallen victim to this. I'll just like, all right, well, this commercial break. I'll just jump and see what pops up on social media. It's not necessarily a decision. The decision was to open social media, and then I'm just kind of off to the races. And the next thing you know, I'm caught up in 10 minutes later, I realize the game's back on, my show's back on, and I'm still sitting here face down in my phone. It feels like some of the decision, or the only decision that I had to make in the very beginning, was just to open up the app. It wasn't necessarily a decision about it didn't feel like I was actively navigating or curating the content that I was receiving.
Yeah, and I think that is true in some cases. I think, what I was alluding to is the decision comes in, there's certain social media items that we go after, and we consistently watch them. There's certain social programs we go in and we watch them. And we have them, we've subscribed to them, and we get their notifications when they post new material and what have you. And so some of those social um, uh, shows, for lack of a better phrase, or a phrase that I can't call to mind right now. But some of them are just, really geared toward keeping you hyped up, right? Keeping you anxious, keeping you angry, keeping you, frustrated about things. And so, and I guess that's what I mean when I say about the decision of what you consume, because you make the decision to subscribe to those channels. And, I know you unconsciously, watch. And so, your heart rate will go up, and you'll get anxious about a topic. And then, before you know it, you've shared that topic. And, so some of those kinds of things is what I'm talking about, where you make that decision when you subscribe to a channel, and then you just continually watch, and you continually feed into that. And I don't even think a lot of times we realize what some of the content that we take in, how it actually affects us, at least not in the moment. And so, and that's one of the things that I think that we just have to be careful of.
Yeah, it requires intentionality. Anything about a comeback and about a rise has to be intentional. We can't leave things to chance. We can't leave it to the algorithm, because I know, like I said, I've been caught out there where I'm just scrolling through and I'm very passive about what I'm consuming. It's like, all right, well, I've got my little home feed. These are the things, people that I've connected with or accounts that I'm following. I see those things pop up. And then based off of what I may stop and look at, that, something else might slide in, like, oh, if you looked at that, here, take a look at this thing. Oh, take a look at this thing. And, I'm being very passive about how I'm consuming information. Like you said, that's where I'm letting the algorithm kind of dictate what I'm doing rather than being intentional about what I'm trying to get out of social media. And let's be real, sometimes intentionally, I'm trying to just kill some time, find some dark humor, something to laugh at, and keep it moving. But that can't be all the time.
Yeah. And, one of the reasons, like I said, why this has come to light, at least for me, is because, if you have a setback in life, and then you're allowing certain things to dictate, what goes into your thoughts for the day, I think that can impact your journey towards your comeback. And so, when you're in that pause moment of that setback and trying to figure things out, I think you just want to be careful of, what you take in, and is it healthy? Is it a healthy avenue towards your comeback? And there are some really cool things that you can find on social media that can help you. I use social media. I like to do a few things in the kitchen, and so clearly there are recipes out there that I really, really like looking up or checking out. And, I like dogs. I don't have a dog right now, but I like dogs. And so, videos about pets and pet care and all that, kind of intrigue me. So, I think this things like that can be healthy, but I just think that you have to be careful of some of the others. So, when you're in that pause phase, I think just being careful about what you take in, because I think when you're in a setback, you can be very vulnerable about different things. And so I think you just have to protect yourself in some ways with what you take in from the social spaces.
Yeah. And, if we're stuck in that passive consumption mode too, we're just taking what the algorithm feeds us. A lot of times what we're going to see are the kind of like the sensationalism, the things that promote or provoke emotional responses. Because to me, it seems like the things that provoke emotional responses are the things that get the most attention on social media.
Absolutely. And the algorithm really doesn't care about where you are, what stage of life you're in, or what you're going through, right? It doesn't care about your peace of mind. It doesn't care about your relationships, right? It doesn't care about any of that. It just cares about, how long that you're going to be on the space, and what you're going to look at, right? And some of your reaction to it. And as you alluded to earlier, how it feeds you other channels that may be similar to what what your interests are. And again, one of the things that I found as I was looking through for this episode was, there was a whistleblower from Facebook back in 2021 that went and testified in front of Congress, and through that whistleblower interaction, um, one of the comments the whistleblower mentioned that really stuck with me was that it's easier to inspire people to anger than it is for any other emotion. And I just thought that was really telling about some of the things that we can consume and can affect us from the social spaces that we visit.
So does that mean Facebook was actively promoting things that would provoke those types of responses from platform users?
That was the outcome from that particular whistleblower, is that they were actively trying to solicit certain response. That anger and division was something that they were actively trying to promote, or those are the channels that they let's just say uplifted more than anything else, because those are the ones that people seem to tie into the quickest, and they were there the most often.
That's interesting. So it seemed, the rage bait type of posts garner the most engagement. So, if I think about it and I come across something that just really gets me fired up about whatever the topic may be, I can see that because, I look at it, I might watch it again just to make sure I heard correctly. And then I'm like, oh man, this is terrible. How could they say that? Or how could they do that? The next thing you know, I've shared the link with my group chats and, all this. And then I'm off to the races, and it becomes, I share that, and the algorithm sees I watched it twice, sees that I also shared it. So it's like, oh, okay, well, we'll keep feeding you things that are in this vein. And then that vicious.
And that's what the algorithm does too, is it takes that information,
right,
and you're sharing it, and it's like, okay, great, here we're on to something, right? And it just keeps moving from there.
right. And, that makes sense too, because this way of working, if we're trying to provoke these emotional responses, we kind of talked about this. I think we touched on it in the habits episode, where we talked about, we got two parts of our mind. We've got the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, and the limbic system is fast and it always reacts first. That's where our emotions live. And the prefrontal cortex is where reason and rationality live. So if these posts are activating our emotions and hitting us in those emotional centers, that's going to be fast. That's going to be super fast. And it's going to prompt us to act before the rational, logical piece of our brain can get the firing and pump the brakes on that whole interaction. That's that's tough.
Yeah, because that emotion, it just goes, right. Once you get on that train, it just runs. And the other thing that I found interesting was how much time we actually spend on social media. There was another study that was done that said the average person spends 2 hours and 23 minutes a day on social media.
What?
which is equal to 36 full days per year.
Not 36
So
working.
Can you imagine?
Not 36 working days. 36 full
36
24-hour
days. Yes. And so you can imagine what is out there for us to consume, and what we have to sift through and interpret and, work through our emotions and so forth. I mean, if we're on the internet, if we're on social media for 2 hours and 23 minutes a day,
right.
And if you figure, the average person their waking hours may be, let's just say 12, right? So, I mean, that's a good chunk of the day that you are spending on social media.
And all that engagement. And if we're, if we allow ourselves, if we're not being intentional, if we're not pausing, we allow ourselves to be manipulated emotionally to stay engaged. It's not just engagement. I mean, it's control. We're not just talking about engagement. We're talking about control, especially if it's divisive things. There are so many different divisive subjects that are out there, in the world right now, and keeping us divided I don't think that's necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, and your body can't really determine if what you perceive to be, a threat, or what gets your emotions going. It can't really tell the difference if it's a real physical threat or if it's something that you pick up on social media, right? It's gonna react the same way because it's designed to react a specific way, right? And I know that you were talking with us before about cortisol and how that affects us. um it's it's just really telling how easily we can be, as a human race, how easily we can be manipulated in a very short period of time.
I think this is a good spot for an experiment for our listeners to try, because most everybody's got, I won't say most everybody. A lot of people have smart watches and things like that. They may even have, a blood pressure cuff that you could take your blood pressure at home. I would challenge some of our listeners, check your heart rate, your respiration rate, your blood pressure before and after a set amount of time consuming social media. I would love to hear, reach out and hit us up on, social media to let us know what's going on. But that would be very interesting to see, how that data holds up across our listenership.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm going to try that myself. I know that I have started to get my news. I like the news. For whatever reason, in this stage of my life, I am very focused on what's happening in the political arena, just because there's so much happening in the political arena. And I know that there have been some things that I have consumed that have really, as they used to say back in the day, got my goat.
Mm.
And so that whole heart monitoring piece, heart rate monitoring piece, I think I'm going to try that. It doesn't happen to me often, but I can remember a few things that really kind of got under my skin a little bit, and because the the way that the news has become these days, there's just a few platforms that, are under one umbrella. And so I'm just one of those people that was like, well, I need to be a little bit more diversified in how I get the news that I consume. And
Mhm.
so I've started to look toward independent, news and all that. But back to the point, I know that there have been some stories out there that have really gotten me worked up on a few topics. So I'm going to try that myself. I'm going to be one of the leaders in that exercise and see what it does for me.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll have to post your results to kind of see how
Mm,
they stack up with everybody else's. But what this really boils down to, though, Nuge, is that our fight for intentionality in our consumption of social media isn't just to stop wasting an effort to stop wasting our time. We're literally fighting for our health and wellness in this
mm,
in this argument here, because we talked about what our stress response or extended stress responses can do to us in terms of our health. So we're not just fighting for our time; we're fighting for our lives quite directly. May, we're finishing up the month of May. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I've had many friends that have had mental health challenges, and one of the things that they had to do is they had to disconnect from social media. There was just so
mm.
much in social media that was taking away from their mental wellness that in order for them to make their comeback in the mental health arena, they had to disengage. So, I mean, there's plenty of evidence to support the negative health impacts of social media if we're not curating it properly.
Yeah, and I think we tell ourselves that we are on the social spaces just because we want to stay informed, kind of be in the know on what's going on. And I can tell you firsthand that all of what's being pushed out there is not really information. Is to get you worked up. Because I can tell you just some of the articles that I look at, they'll have less, even not just words. You had talk about clickbait, right? And how it's presented, but it's not just the words; it's also the images.
Mhm.
Because there could be an image, of certain individuals in the political scene. It's like, oh, really? That's interesting. And then when you click on it and you look at it, that particular article has nothing to do with the image that you that made you click, right? So you have to be really careful. And if you're looking for to be informed, you just got to think about it. If the news that you're taking in, if it's making you feel furious, if it's making you feel helpless every day, are you really being informed, or are you just being used in that whole algorithm argument?
Yeah, it's trying to just disable the way that it's designed is designed to disable the pause for us. Because if we're getting into this emotional response, like you said, this definitely ties back to our habit conversations around the habit loop. We talked about the habit loop where there's a
Mhm.
cue, it initiates a craving, and then there's a response and the reward. Well, what this is trying to do is to shorten that gap from the cue to the response, to make that gap almost nothing, to be almost instantaneous. Trying to hijack this notion of us being able to pause. And if there's no pause, then that means that we are not filtering our information properly. We could be getting misinformation. That's the thing that
Mhm.
frustrates me the most, is the proliferation of misinformation,
Mhm.
because we as consumers of that information are not pausing to make sure that what we're consuming is valid.
That's a good point. I think back to being in school and learning about, critical thinking. And if you ever needed critical thinking in a social space, I mean, social media is definitely it.
Facts.
Because there's so much fake stuff out there. I mean, with the age of AI, I mean, you don't know if you're looking at a real video or a real image or an AI image. I mean, AI has gotten so good. It has
Mhm.
come so far in its development that you just don't know what you're looking at. And so you really have to be critical about what you're looking at, what you're consuming. and then how you interpret that. So, um, and so I mentioned politics before, and the news, because I'm really um, I'm really into that right now. I mean, it's just something that has really intrigued me. And don't ask me where that's come from. Through the years, I don't know that I was as interested as much as I am today as I was, through years gone by. Not that I wasn't interested, but not like I am now. But I just want to make sure that we reiterate to our audience that we're not saying that because you're deeply interested about politics or the economy or anything socially, the state of what's going on in the world, because I mean, those things are important at wherever dose you decide that you want to be involved in that, or want to consume that. Those things are important, and those things affect our everyday life, and so there is a place for that. There is a space for that, I think. Um, but I think that we also have to just be careful that we are not. Um, telling people that, that's something that they should not be paying attention to, because you need to pay attention to what's
Yeah,
happening.
we still need to care. We still
Yeah.
need to care. We just have to be intentional about the information that we're taking in. Don't stop caring, because if we stop caring, then we've already lost everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you care, I mean, that means you're paying attention because you care. Right.
Mhm.
So, that is hugely, hugely important. Um, So, so here's a question, I guess, for our audience. Is the way that you consume the information actually working for you? Is it actually making you or equipping you to do something positive in your life, or to do something, positive about the situation or the information that you're consuming? Or is it just making you upset? Is it making you angry? Is it making you anxious? Is it just making you tired? Right. Some of the stuff can just, make you tired. And so I think that you have to ask yourself that question, and is it really helping you to make a decision or to make a positive change, or is it some positive influence in the direction that you want to go, especially as it relates to your comeback, right? If you're pausing and if you're looking for information and you're trying to build upon a foundation that you have to reach your comeback, you really got to take a look at, is this information that I'm consuming, is it really a positive benefit for me to achieve that comeback that I desire?
Yeah. Is it informing you, or is it inflaming you? I think those are the ends of the spectrum. I think there's some middle ground there too. Because I know there's
But
some
what's the
things that
difference? What's the difference in that? Informed and inflamed. Like how would one I
like,
mean, I understand being informed to get knowledge, right? But how would you differentiate those in what we're talking about today?
so I'll just speak, speaking for me, I feel informed when I am presented with material that I can understand, that I can process, that I can use to dig deeper, to find more information, that to bring me a comfortable level of understanding about the topic. That's when I feel informed. Inflamed is when something just straight up pisses me off, and I want to just react to it.
Mm.
Right? It's not giving me any new information. It's just telling me something to piss me off. And then I think there's some middle ground in there too, because there could be some things that aren't, informing me, but they damn sure could be pissing me off at the same time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And of course the goal is not to be uninformed, right? You need to be informed because, like I said, there's so many things that are happening in the world. You need to be informed and see what affects you outside of, what you think you can control or not. I mean, there's just things that you just need to be aware of, right? Things you just need to know about. And so the goal is not to be uninformed. I think the goal is to be just intentional about, where you get your information, and how much time you spend gathering that information or receiving that information, and just what it is, right? Take it in smaller doses. I mean, 2 hours and 23 minutes a day is a long time.
Yes, that is a significant percentage of our waking time. And, if we're not careful, we're going to spiral, spiral out of control. We'll be responding emotionally. We won't be rationally, or critically thinking about the things that we're consuming. And like we already mentioned, it could have those negative health effects too if we keep this up long term.
Yeah. So, one other thing that I read, Frankie, somebody said that you have to treat uh, what you take in from social media, treat it like your bank account, right? Every piece of content that you consume is either an investment
Mm,
or it's an expense,
mm,
right? What is it giving you back? What is your ROI on that information that you're taking in?
right.
And I thought that was pretty interesting analogy on how you consume from social media.
Yeah, and I mean, it just ties back into the central theme that I think we've been talking about this whole time, which is adding intentionality to the whole process of engaging with social media, making
Uh-huh.
sure we understand the impacts of what we're consuming and making conscious decisions to say no sometimes. Like, no, I don't want to consume this, or no, I need to stop. And I think this is a good spot for us to start trying to lean in and talk about some potential ways that we can better curate and be more intentional about our interaction with social media.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. I can imagine that we all have a few different social media accounts or channels that we subscribe to. We may even have some that we subscribe to that we haven't really listened to in a long time. And so, taking an inventory, I think, is first and foremost of the channels that you subscribe to. And just eliminate, certainly eliminate the ones that you haven't, paid any attention to because they're just taking up space in your folder there. But taking a look at the ones that really are giving you positive information or giving you exactly what you're looking to receive from the channel that you're looking at. And I think that just goes back to what do you want your outcome to be? What are you actually looking for? It goes back to that intentionality. And it also goes back to the experiment that you were talking about, which of these sites are making my heart rate go up and making me anxious, right? And is this
Right.
something that I really need to consume? And so I think taking that inventory is one step that we can take to better determine, what makes sense for us as an individual and what we want to consume.
Yeah, and I think that's an easy first step, but it could be kind of effortful depending on how many things that we subscribe to, how many people we're following. That could be a
Mm,
daunting task. And so my advice to anyone who wants to take this on is don't try to do it all in one fell swoop. Break it up
mm,
into smaller pieces. Say, all right, well, I'm going to devote 10 minutes to this today. And, it's like, all right, I'll just give it 10 minutes a day for a week and see what kind of progress I can make. Don't have to do it all in one fell swoop. Because if you've been on social media for years, I'm sure you may have accumulated quite a few
mm.
things that you're following and subscribed to. In addition to curating and taking inventory of what you're following and subscribed to, I would also recommend that we take a close look at our notification settings on the social media apps. One quick way that social media apps can hijack our attention is the dopamine response of when we hear that little bing or whatever the notification sound is when somebody posted
Mhm.
something or somebody commented on something we posted, somebody liked what we posted, there's new content available. uh, those are just other ways that the social media applications can just pull us back in, not and take that control away from us. So making sure we're very deliberate about our notification settings is also something we should do in addition to the inventory that you mentioned, dude.
True confession. I've turned off all notifications other than PSI podcasts. I mean, I do want to know when somebody comes to our channel and likes or comments or something like that. I do want to know, so I've let that on, but I've turned off um, the others. But I
Mhm.
guess the other thing that I would suggest, Frankie, is I think about and maybe I'm dating myself for some folks in the audience, and there's some folks who know exactly what I'm talking about. Is you know what did we do before the internet? What did we do before Facebook? What did we do before cell phones? I mean, we interacted with people. We had
Right.
personal
Hmm.
human relationships And, I think that we got a lot out of those relationships,
Yeah.
spending
Okay.
time with people, talking to people, doing social things with people versus doing social things in a space of people that we don't know, can't see, what have you. Well, I mean, you can see everybody now with social media and all of the tools. But I mean, my point is, think about some of your personal relationships and maybe think about how to invest more time in that area of your life to get some fulfillment versus what you get in the social spaces. And again, I'm not saying the social spaces are necessarily a bad thing, but as Frankie mentioned, in smaller doses, right? Take some of that 2 hours and 23 minutes and invest it in, someone that you enjoy being around, somebody that you really love and care about.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the same vein of that personal interaction, if we frame it in back in personal, personal interaction was our main way of interacting. If we encountered someone who was negative or was sending us into our stress response, what did we do when we were interacting with them personally? What was our option? We would choose not to spend time with that
Sure.
particular person. We would lessen the interaction. And I think that's another thing that we need to take into consideration when we're trying to be intentional about what we're doing on social media. Unfollowing somebody or something is not rude. It's not a bad thing because sometimes you need to acknowledge, all right, well, yeah, this might be my friend over here that's running this page or this channel, but the content is not helping me in a positive way. It is not bringing positivity in my life. In fact, it is bringing negativity. It's not rude to unfollow. I have the same conversation with colleagues all the time about the feature that comes on a meeting request. When somebody sends you a meeting request, guess what you can do? You can decline it. You don't have to just
Yeah.
approve it every time. But something about it is difficult. It's like, oh, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. No, you're not being rude. You're just protecting your mental health. You're protecting your well-being by curating what you're taking in.
Absolutely. And you have to, if you're on a journey for a comeback, you have to be selfish to some extent. Because let's face it, the comeback is all about you. It's truly all about you and what your heart's desire and what your goals are. So it's okay, like you said, to say no. You do have to be a little bit selfish when it comes to that. But certainly, when you think about the algorithms of social spaces. I mean, the social spaces, they want your attention no matter what it is, right? At all costs, they want your attention, right? At the cost of your relationship, at the cost of, the time, your free time and that you might spend with people that you love. It doesn't matter what you fear. I mean, they want your attention no matter what. And so, um, you know, just saying that, I mean, this segment is all about the pause because you really do need to pause and think about, what direction that you're going to travel in with this in these social spaces and how much time you want to spend. And so it's all about the pause and thinking about that in a conscious manner, and just taking back what belongs to you, which is your time and your, as you mentioned earlier, your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Because that belongs to you, right? That's probably more valuable to you than most other things that you consider valuable in your life.
100%. And, as we get ready to wrap things up here, I just want to reiterate how important it is for us to be an active participant in shaping what we're consuming. Because if we're just riding the algorithm, we're just doing that passive consumption. In the grand scheme of things, what's happening is we're allowing ourselves to be pulled into an echo chamber where we're just hearing the same things bouncing from wall to wall. The algorithm saw that you like this or watch this. So it's going to feed you even more stuff that's in that same vein. And before you know it, you're stuck in this echo chamber where all you're hearing is the same thing, the same voices telling you the same thing. And that's not a good thing. We need diversity of thought. We need diversity of information. We need good information. So we have to make sure we avoid that falling into that echo chamber and really carve a path through this social media space to get something positive out of it. We can't let it rule our lives. We have to make sure we use it as the tool it was designed to be.
Yeah, and so with that, Frankie, one of the reasons why we had this conversation today was thinking about how we ask our audience to like and follow us. And, we wanted to be honest, and we wanted to, have some integrity about why we asked for that. And so, if this is a podcast that is something that you believe helps you think differently, helps you with your pause, helps you with your, getting unstuck, and helps you towards your comeback, then hit and follow, like and subscribe, right? Because that's really why we want you to do that. Sure, we want to be in that algorithm space where other people can find us, but we want them to find us for a true self help, self positive reason. So we don't want to create any misconception about why we're asking for your likes and follows and subscriptions. So if it's something that you can relate to, if it's something that you identify with, then by all means, please do. We would appreciate it very much if you do, for sure. But we want to make sure that you are deliberate about that decision, that you're conscious about that choice that you make to be with us in the space. And we really appreciate that, and we appreciate you.
Yeah. And with that, if you're looking for things related to the PSI Effect podcast, the best place to start is our website. This is psipod.com. There you'll find the links to all of our content, all the episodes, all the different platforms that you can get the audio version of our podcast, Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcast. If this is your jam, if this is something that you want to make sure you don't miss, subscribe, follow us in those spaces. Also find us on YouTube. You can search for the PSI Effect podcast, as well as use our handle at This Is PSI Pod, which is also our handle for social media at This Is PSI Pod for Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We hope to see you out there.
Thank you, Frankie. Really appreciate that. So everybody, just, thank you for being here. Just remember that your setbacks are temporary, that your comebacks are legendary. And until next time, go out there and be brave, be intentional. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the PSI Effect podcast. This show doesn't happen without you, and you can connect with us via Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit our website at thisispsipod.com and find us on YouTube and social media at This Is PSI Pod. That's at This Is PSI Pod. Until next time, remember, be brave and rise on purpose.